First of all, I'd just like to thank Minister Ryan for taking the time to be with us this morning, for setting out a challenge, a real challenge for us collectively, I think, and then also personally, which is fabulous. But also, Minister, for the sense of appreciation of the progress that's already been made, massive progress that's been made in the decarbonisation of the electricity sector over the last many years, and also the encouraging words and your belief that that we can do this. So it's very much appreciated. I'd also like to welcome everybody to the webinar and to thank as well, add my thanks to those of Claire, to Jim and Mark. The title of this is Collective Action. And I hope as we all speak this morning, you'll see that there is a real sense of the collective about that. So, and just make sure I've got my, can move the slides for a second. So when we look at ESB Networks and our purpose, so our purpose in ESB Networks has always been to connect and people to their electricity, and to do that in a safe, secure, and an affordable way. But over the last number of years, when we see the fact that electricity and electrification and renewable energy generally, and the cornerstone that is for climate action, we've changed our purpose and we've evolved our purpose to include climate action as a fundamental part of ESB Networks' purpose. And you can see just an excerpt from our strategy there. And three of our 7 strategic pillars talk directly to climate action. So we challenge ourselves in relation to the sustainability of all of our own operations, and I'll come back to that during the next few minutes. And then we particularly call out 2 major components of climate action where we think it's possible for Ireland to make a massive difference. And the first of those is about connecting more renewables and accommodating them on the network. And then the second is about using that electricity, that clean electricity, to drive carbon out of heat transport and industry and society generally. Because we know that at the moment, electricity generation generates about 20% of the carbon generated and used in Ireland. But if we can use clean renewable electricity through the electricity network to electrify, then we can know that we can leverage that clean electricity for a much brighter future. This is really nice to be talking to you today. We're at the start of a 5-year regulatory cycle. So back in December, the Commission for the Regulation of the Utilities, they made a final determination on what we call PR5, which is the framework for the next 5 years for networks. It sets out a framework for what we do and the investments that we're going to make. And right at the very start, it comes after well over a year of consultation and engagement, but right at the very start, we and EirGrid and CRU signed up to some fundamental objectives, some shared vision for PR5. And you can see that the first of those is facilitating a secure, low-carbon future. So just taking those aspects in turn, connecting and accommodating more renewables, and I'll flick through this really quickly, but you can see that already we have 4.7 gigawatts of renewables connected to Ireland's electricity network, which is fabulous. You can see roughly half of that's being connected at transmission level and almost half at distribution level. You'll also see the growth in renewables, and I think what's really important to point out is the rate at which we've been adding, and we've been able collectively with the developers, with EirGrid, with many other stakeholders, we've been able to add renewables to the grid. That's been doubling every 3 years or so, and it needs to double, and it'll increase still further into the future. We expect to connect about more than 600 megawatts of renewables and storage to the network this year, and then over 1,000 megawatts in 2022. And that's got to continue right the way through to 2030 in order to hit our targets. We know that the majority of renewables connected so far are onshore wind, but that's going to change fundamentally over the next couple of years. And then into the future, as the Minister mentioned, looking at solar, looking at offshore wind, and also, and of particular interest to us, is looking at microgeneration and the support that can be provided throughout the distribution system from renewables connected to the distribution system. As I'm just trying to move the slide on there. Yeah, and when we look at the importance then of leveraging that clean electricity through electrification, we see some significant enough changes. We'd like to see a situation where all heating is through heat pumps, where all vehicles are electric vehicles. You can see in the middle of that slide how in ESB Networks, as part of our own work on sustainability, we're trying to electrify as much of our own fleet as is possible. And also you can see the importance of smart meters. There's a smart meter in the top right-hand corner of that slide. And we have installed 250,000 smart meters so far. And our intention is to roll out smart meters to every household and facility in Ireland over the next 3 or 4 years, 2.5 million in total. But that's going to bring challenges, both the intermittent nature of the renewables, the additional renewables on the system, and the way in which customers are going to engage with the electricity system using the network for purposes that it was never originally intended and designed for. And that gives us a challenge, and we're going to have to repurpose the network. So, transforming the network and the role of the distribution system operator is going to be really important for us to maximize the renewables and maximize the potential for electrification. And this is a big part of the different things that we're doing as part of our next 5-year regulatory cycle, PR5. So in the first instance, our low voltage network originally wasn't designed to deal with electrification of vehicles. And equally, we need a lot of system services. The sort of technical stuff that the Minister was talking about earlier on that's required to compensate for the intermittency of renewables and the challenges of security and power quality. A lot of those services are going to come through the distribution network. And that means that the role of that network is going to have to change quite significantly. We're going to have to put visibility and management systems into our low voltage network where they aren't there at the moment. We're going to have to repurpose that network so that we can ensure that we can electrify all the heat and transport that we require, and also facilitate the services, the provision of services for intermittent renewables. If I could have the next slide, please. We talk about collective action. We're really clear, and again, the Minister made this quite clear. It's going to be a collaboration, needs to be collaborative. Over the last couple of years, we've spent a lot of time reaching out and listening and consulting. We know that this is something that ESB Networks can't do on its own, or indeed between ESB Networks and EirGrid. We need communities, we need innovation, supply companies, customers playing their own part, and a real coalition of the willing to work together. So we're putting an increasing focus on reaching out, engagement and listening, because it's going to be absolutely critical that we all work together on this. And if I could have the final slide, please. So just before I hand over, climate action, it's a fundamental part of ESB Networks' strategy. Our belief is that we can and we must connect and accommodate significantly more renewable generation on the system. The benefit of that is not just in reducing the carbon in renewable generation or in electricity generation, but it's also in the whole scale electrification that allows us to drive carbon out of heat transport industry and society generally. In order to achieve that, there really is an invisible challenge about repurposing the network. The Minister was talking about the transport network and how that has to be repurposed, but our electricity network has to be repurposed for this, and we're setting about that. And we also, in the middle of that, have to transform our role as the distribution system operator to support that as well. And above all things, we'll achieve this only if we all work together, and that requires a real coalition. not just of ESB Networks, EirGrid and the CRU, but also of all of the customers, all the stakeholders, the developers, the supply companies, the aggregators, the technology providers, and a whole host of other people. But I'm confident, Minister, if we all work together, we can rise to your challenge.